An update now on the wildfires burning in several parts of the country. We begin in Atlantic Canada, where thousands of people are under evacuation orders. Thousands more are on high alert. Some of the fires currently burning are in Newfoundland. Water bombers attacked the Kingston fire yesterday. It's the largest of 3 out-of-control wildfires in Newfoundland, at about 65 square kilometers. It's forced people to evacuate more than half a dozen communities along the north shore of Conception Bay. CBC's Heather Gillis has more from St. John's.
About an hour ago, we heard from the Premier, and he delivered some really terrible news for people in that area. Estimates are about 100 homes have been lost near the Kingston fire, possibly a school as well. So that's just devastating news for these communities. Just really, some of them don't have homes to go back to, and we're not quite sure what structures have been lost yet because it's still too smoky, too hot, too dangerous to get in there and do a full assessment. The Premier said that his government is also asking the federal government for help for people who have been displaced, expanding EI, because some people obviously can't go back to their workplaces in these communities as well. As for the fire in central Newfoundland, the Martin Lake fire, that is about 400 kilometers from St. John's, and cabins in that area have been lost too, so that is devastating news for people who have some cabins or cottages in that area. Now, that fire is about 140 meters from the highway. It's called the Bay d'Espoir Highway, and it links down to the south coast, so the road access for people living in that area has been cut off there as well. And that fire is about 16 kilometers south of Grand Falls, Windsor, which is a major hub in the area. But thankfully, there's already a fire break about 11 kilometers long before Grand Falls, Windsor, to help that fire from spreading towards that community, because that was constructed when there were other major fires there a couple of years back. Before we move on to the Paddy's Pond fire, which is the one that's on the doorstep of St. John's, I want to talk a little bit about some brush fires that were set here Tuesday overnight into Wednesday in St. John's, about 5 of them. Police say that they were set intentionally. They now have a suspect in custody. He's expected to appear in court today, and this 20-year-old is facing charges of arson and is going to be slapped with 3 $50,000 fines for breaking the fire ban in this province. Here's what the Premier had to say in reaction to that.
Just shocked and surprised that someone would do something like that in any day. But given the situation we're in right now, obviously we've been talking for days about the finite number of assets that are available in the country to fight fires, and to intentionally set a fire that needed assets, and thankfully the St. John's Regional Fire Department was able to address that situation very quickly, is just it's kind of unthinkable, and can't really get my head around how someone would want to do that.
As for the big fire burning outside St. John's at Paddy's Pond, that's about 306 hectares now. Crews made good progress yesterday, but it's still out of control. So it's still too early to say when people could go back to their homes. However, weather conditions are a touch more favorable today to fight those fires.
CBC's Heather Gillis in St. John's. And we are also tracking a new evacuation order that is west of Halifax in the Annapolis Valley. Just this hour, officials confirming that 42 homes have had to be evacuated, with the fire about 300 hectares in size, burning out of control. Brett Reskin has the latest on that from Halifax.
This is a new evacuation order, the first time that we're seeing homes under a mandatory evacuation. We have seen businesses. We'll talk about that in a moment, but let's talk about this evacuation because it just came down within the last hour or so. In the West Dalhousie area in Annapolis Valley, just near kind of Bridgetown, between Trunk 10 and Trunk 8, there's a section of West Dalhousie Road that is under a mandatory evacuation notice, with residents told to get out now because there is a fire nearby, just south of that street. So that is the latest on that evacuation notice. That fire popped up and was first discovered and noticed sometime yesterday. So it is a fairly new fire, relatively small compared to others that we've been talking about. But it is threatening those homes along that stretch of West Dalhousie Road in the Annapolis Valley. Now, I mentioned the businesses that were under an evacuation notice. That evacuation notice has been lifted for those businesses in the Bayers Lake area. That Bayers Lake area was the site of a fire that was sparked a couple of days ago that really had crews throwing everything they could at it, whether it be personnel on the ground, the water bombers in the air. that had come over from New Brunswick to assist. That fire was announced to be held late last night, yesterday afternoon, and then today the evacuation order was lifted just recently at the beginning of this hour, actually just about 15 minutes ago or so. So good news for the Halifax residents here who were concerned seeing all that smoke in the skies a couple of days ago, but as for the latest information, again, that mandatory evacuation notice for West Dalhousie Road in the Annapolis Valley. Sarah.
Brett, let's talk about New Brunswick. What's the latest there?
So taking a look, we have, again, just like we saw good news for Halifax, we have good news for Moncton with that fire that was north of Moncton now being contained, certainly much smaller and no longer out of control. That's thanks to lots of work and some favorable winds. Taking a look up at Miramichi, though, that fire is growing. That is a wildfire that is out of control, still around 1,300 hectares in size in the Miramichi area. We've been talking about that over the last few days because it's a stubborn fire being fueled by the wind there. 3 more fires have popped up in the last 24 hours. They are smaller and they're in that area kind of between Miramichi, Bathurst, Campbellton, in that kind of corner of the province. Very wooded area, so unfortunately lots of fuel for those fires to go through and burn, but crews certainly have lots of trouble on their hands, lots of fires on their hands to deal with. Possible good news, there was some rain in the Miramichi area. We just had a couple of raindrops here in Halifax, but certainly not the type of volume of rain that we would need to turn things around to try to lessen the effects of this dry drought that we're seeing here in the Maritimes.
That's CBC's Brett Ruskin in Halifax. We're also watching a growing wildfire that's on Vancouver Island. The Mount Underwood fire near Port Alberni has jumped in size to more than 21 square kilometers. BC wildfire officials say its rapid growth is unusual for fires on the island. They say hot and dry weather are likely to blame. Communities nearby are not considered under threat. One of the wildfires burning in Ontario's Kawartha Lakes region is now being considered held and is no longer out of control. Mayor Doug Elmsley says he's cautiously optimistic about that news.
We are cautiously optimistic about that news. With the Burnt River fire, I'm reminded that conditions are still very dry and we're probably one lightning strike away from being right back in the soup again.
Another fire burning in Kirkfield, Ontario, does remain out of control, but the mayor says that he's hopeful that progress will be made today. Hot and dry conditions persist in the area northeast of Toronto, and a total fire ban remains in place for the whole city. There are no evacuation orders that have been issued yet. This is CBC News Network.